The silence hit Ethan the moment he opened his eyes. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet that made mornings gentle. It was the heavy kind that made the world feel wrong. Thanksgiving morning was supposed to sound alive, pans clattering, someone arguing about stuffing, his mother calling his name to help, his sister running around searching for chargers and hair ties. But today, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Ethan lay still for a moment, confused, as if expecting a sudden burst of noise to prove he wasn't imagining things. When nothing came, he sat up quickly, his heartbeat rising with a strange worry he couldn't explain. He walked downstairs, still rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The stairs creaked under his steps, the sound echoing louder than he liked. He expected to see suitcases by the entrance, or maybe his father reading the newspaper, pretending he didn't hear anyone but listening to everything. Instead, the living room looked untouched. The couch pillows were exactly where he left them last night. The TV was off. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting in thin stripes of early sunlight. The house looked like no one had been there for days. He frowned and moved toward the kitchen, thinking maybe everyone woke up early for once. The kitchen, too, was empty, cleaner than usual. Too clean. Thanksgiving mornings were never tidy. There should have been spices scattered around, flour on the counter, and at least 3 pots of something simmering. But the counters looked spotless. Then he saw it. A single folded note sitting in the center of the empty dining table. Ethan walked toward it slowly, a part of him already guessing what it might say, another part hoping he was wrong. He picked it up and opened it. Only one sentence was written, in his mother's neat handwriting. "We decided to leave early. Hope you understand." That was it. No explanation. No sorry. No details. Not even a goodbye. Ethan blinked at the words, feeling his chest tighten. His family had talked about a Thanksgiving trip for months, a luxury resort. Something fancy and expensive. Something they couldn't stop bragging about. Every time he asked about it, they told him he was included. They told him this year they wanted everyone together. They told him not to worry. But now, standing there with the cold note in his hand, Ethan felt the truth settle in. They had gone without him. They had made the decision, packed their bags, walked out the door, and not one of them thought to wake him. Not one of them cared enough to check on him. Not one of them cared enough to say goodbye. He dropped into the nearest chair, letting the note fall onto the table. His hands trembled. He didn't know if he was angry or sad or simply exhausted from years of being the afterthought. His family always found ways to leave him out: parties, plans, dinners, even simple outings. They always had excuses. "We forgot. We thought you were busy. You were asleep. It wasn't a big deal." He used to accept those excuses. But today, the truth felt sharper. Maybe they never actually saw him. Maybe they didn't want to. The house felt colder the longer he sat there. Every corner reminded him of how easily he had been erased from their plans. He stared at the walls, the chairs, the empty table, wondering if this was the moment he should finally stop hoping things would change. His phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the heavy silence. For a moment he hesitated. He didn't want another message from a family member pretending everything was fine. But the name on the screen wasn't his mother, father, or sister. It was Lena. His heart eased a little at the sight of her name. Lena had been in his life for years, steady, warm, understanding, the kind of person who noticed things others ignored. She always sensed when he was hurting, even when he hid it. And he had been quietly drawn to her for just as long. He cared about her in ways he never said out loud. She, without realizing it, had become the person he trusted most. He opened her message. "I made breakfast. Come over if you want company." Ethan read it twice, feeling something inside him soften. He didn't know how she always seemed to reach him at the right time. But she did. And right now, he needed someone. He needed warmth, noise, conversation, anything but the cold emptiness of the house. He stared at the note again, the simple sentence that had ruined his morning. His family was gone. They didn't want him today. But Lena did. She reached out because she cared. And for a moment the choice became clear. Still, he hesitated. Part of him felt embarrassed to show up at her door like this. Carrying hurt he shouldn't have to explain. Another part of him felt afraid that being around her would stir feelings he had kept locked away for too long. But he also knew that staying in this empty house would break him a little more with every passing minute. Ethan stood up. He grabbed his jacket. He walked toward the door without looking back. As he stepped outside, the crisp autumn air hit him, clearing his mind. The neighborhood was quiet, decorations hung on porches, leaves scattered on lawns, people preparing for their celebrations. It reminded him that Thanksgiving was a day meant for togetherness, warmth, belonging. And walking alone made him feel the absence of those things even more. But the moment he thought of Lena, a small spark of hope pushed back against the sadness. She had invited him. She had thought of him. She wanted him there. And that meant something maybe more than he dared to admit. He walked quickly, almost eager now, as if reaching her door would anchor him again. Memories of her came back with every step, her soft laugh, her warm eyes, her gentle way of speaking. She had been his safe place without even knowing it. And maybe today, she would be the one person who wouldn't leave him behind. As he reached her building, he felt a mix of nerves and relief. He climbed the stairs, each step carrying a quiet hope that this day might not be ruined after all. When he reached her door, he paused, took a breath, and knocked. A moment later, the door opened, and there she was, Lena, smiling softly, like she had been waiting just for him. Her eyes warmed when she saw him, and in that instant, Ethan felt something shift inside him. The pain of the morning didn't disappear, but it softened, replaced by something gentler. Something that felt like belonging. He didn't know it yet, that stepping through that doorway would change everything. Not just his Thanksgiving, but the quiet, longing part of his heart he had been ignoring for years. And somewhere deep down, he sensed that whatever happened next would lead him to a place his family never managed to give him. A place where he was seen, wanted, and maybe even loved. Lena's apartment always felt warm, even on cold mornings. When Ethan stepped inside, the familiar smell of cinnamon and soft coffee wrapped around him, like a blanket he didn't know he needed. Her small place lit cozy, twinkling lights along the window, a few autumn decorations, a soft blanket draped over the couch. It felt lived in the best way. And for the first time that morning, Ethan felt his breathing steady. "You're here," Lena said gently, closing the door behind him. Her expression softened the second she saw his face. She put one hand lightly on his arm, not pushing, just offering comfort. "I'm really glad you came." Ethan tried to smile, but the weight of the morning sat too deep. "They left," he said quietly. "All of them. No warning. Just a note." Lena's eyes darkened, the kind of sadness that wasn't for herself but for him. She reached up and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, her voice soft. "That's cruel, Ethan. And it's not your fault. You didn't deserve that." He didn't know how to respond. Every time someone mentioned his family, he felt a knot tighten inside him, years of being pushed aside, ignored or forgotten. But Lena wasn't judging him. She wasn't pitying him. She was simply there, steady and warm, the way she always had been. She guided him into the kitchen as if she had already planned to take care of him today. The small table was set with pancakes, cut fruit, and warm tea, simple but comforting. She pulled out a chair for him. "Eat, you need it," Ethan sat down, watching her move around the kitchen with quiet grace. She wasn't trying to impress him or fill the silence with meaningless words. She just wanted him to feel better. That alone made something in his chest ache with a kind of gratitude he didn't know how to express. As they ate, the tension slowly eased. Lena talked about little things, her new neighbor, her attempt at baking pumpkin bread, how she burned the first batch. Ethan found himself laughing softly, the sound surprising him. Lena's eyes lit up when he laughed. She seemed to soak in the moment, as if seeing him relax was the only thing she cared about. But even as he smiled, Ethan found himself observing her more closely. The way her eyes softened when she looked at him. The gentle tone of her voice when she spoke his name. The way she leaned slightly closer when she sensed he was drifting into sadness. He had always admired her, but today something felt different. Stronger. Clearer. Almost frightening. Lena sat across from him, her fingers wrapped around her cup. "Ethan, can I ask something?" He nodded. "Did any part of you expect them to leave you out again?" Ethan looked down at his plate. "A small part, maybe. But I told myself this year would be different. And instead," Lena said softly, "they showed you exactly who they are." Her words weren't harsh. They were honest. And sometimes honesty hurt more than anything else. Ethan let out a slow breath. "I don't know why I keep hoping for them to change." "Because you have a good heart," Lena said gently. "You give people more chances than they deserve." She hesitated for a moment. "But you also deserve someone who does the same for you." Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke, and Ethan wondered if she was talking about more than just his family. He wondered if she meant herself, if she was the one willing to stay. The one who cared enough to notice the cracks others ignored. He wanted to reach across the table, take her hand, and tell her he saw her too. That she wasn't just a friend. That she had been the quiet, unspoken part of his heart for a long time. That fear held him back. Fear of ruining what they already had. Fear of misunderstanding her. Fear of losing the only steady person in his life. Before he could say anything, Lena stood up and walked to the counter. She searched through a drawer, pulling out a small holiday-themed candle. She lit it, letting the room fill with its warm glow. "You're staying for Thanksgiving dinner, okay?" No arguments. One already planned on making extra. Ethan smiled faintly. "Lena, you didn't have to. I wanted to," she cut in softly. "You matter to me, Ethan." Those words settled deep inside him. Simple, genuine, more meaningful than anything his family had given him in years. Just then, a gentle knock on the front door broke the moment. Lena froze. Her eyes flicked to Ethan, then the door. There was something in her expression, uncertainty, maybe even worry. Ethan watched as she brushed her hands on her jeans, hesitated again, then slowly walked to the door. When she opened it, a tall man stood in the hallway. He held a grocery bag in one hand and gave Lena a smile that felt too confident, too familiar. "Am I early?" the man asked. "I thought you might need help with the cooking." Ethan felt the air shift. Lena's expression tightened. "Adrian. I didn't think you'd actually come, Adrian." Ethan's stomach sank. He had heard the name before, someone Lena had gone on a couple of dates with. Someone she wasn't sure she liked. Someone she said didn't feel like the right fit. But the way Adrian stepped inside, like he belonged there, made Ethan sit up straighter. Adrian looked at Ethan and offered a polite nod. "Didn't realize you already had company." Lena quickly stepped between them, trying to calm the awkward moment. "Ethan's a close friend. He's important to me." Ethan felt the words hit him like a soft heartbeat. Important to me. He didn't know if she meant it in a deeper way, or just as comfort. But the warmth it brought was impossible to ignore. Adrian set the grocery bag on the counter. "Well, I brought ingredients for dinner. Figured we could cook together. The next hour moved fast. Adrian tried to take control of the kitchen, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, cracking jokes, trying to make Lena laugh the way Ethan knew she liked to laugh. Lena stayed polite, but Ethan noticed her discomfort. She kept glancing at him, as if checking to see if he was okay. Her eyes lingered on him longer than they did on Adrian. That small detail fueled something inside Ethan. He hadn't allowed himself to feel fully hope. At one point, Lena stepped closer to Ethan while Adrian was busy at the stove. She lowered her voice. I didn't plan this. He wasn't supposed to come today. Are you dating him? Ethan asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. No, she whispered. We went out twice. I didn't feel a connection. He texted about stopping by, but I thought he was joking. Ethan swallowed. Feels serious to him. Lena looked at him with a softness that made the room feel warmer. Ethan, if something is on your mind, tell me, please. He hesitated. The words he had held inside for years sat heavy on his tongue. She deserved honesty. He deserved a chance. The moment felt fragile, but also important. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't mind waking up alone today. What hurt was realizing the person I wanted to spend this day with might not want me in the same way. Lena's breath caught. Her eyes softened with emotion, deep, warm, trembling slightly. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, Adrian called from the kitchen. Lena? Can you help me with something? She froze, caught between two people, two choices, two futures. And Ethan knew that whatever Lena did next would change everything. She turned slowly, caught between what was safe and what her heart quietly wanted. And in that silent moment, everything began to shift. Lena stood frozen for a moment, torn between the kitchen where Adrian waited and the quiet corner where Ethan sat. Ethan could see the conflict in her eyes. It wasn't about cooking. It wasn't about manners. It was about something deeper, something she had been avoiding, maybe without meaning to. She had two people pulling her in different emotional directions, and the next decision she made would reveal exactly where her heart leaned. She took a slow breath and stepped toward Adrian, but she didn't look away from Ethan until the last second. Ethan watched her go, feeling a strange mix of fear and hope twisting inside him. He didn't want her to choose out of politeness. He wanted her to choose out of feeling. For once in his life, he wanted someone to choose him because they wanted him, not because they felt obligated, not because they felt sorry for him, but because they cared. The sound of voices came from the kitchen, Lena's soft voice, Adrian's louder one. Ethan couldn't hear the words, but the tone told enough. Adrian spoke like someone who believed he already belonged in her life. Lena answered quietly, like someone unsure of how to push him back without hurting him. The tension in the apartment grew heavier. Ethan stood up, pretending to stretch his legs, but really he needed space to think. He moved to the window and stared at the grey sky outside. Leaves blew across the street. Families walked with bags of food, laughing and talking. Every window he looked at seemed to show someone surrounded by love. Meanwhile, he stood in an apartment where his presence suddenly felt like a fragile balance between two lives that didn't belong to him. His heart felt tight. Maybe he shouldn't have come. Maybe he should have stayed home and faced the emptiness. Instead, he had walked into a moment that might break him, more than the note his family left on the table. But then Lena spoke his name. He turned around. She stood at the kitchen doorway, her hands clasped together, her expression anxious but soft. Adrian stood behind her, looking irritated, as if something hadn't gone the way he planned. Lena stepped toward Ethan. Can we talk for a second? She asked, her voice gentle. Adrian sighed loudly. We can talk after you help me finish this. Lena didn't turn toward him. She didn't move. She didn't apologize. Instead, she spoke with a calm firmness Ethan had rarely seen in her. Adrian, I'll talk to you in a moment. Please give me some space. The look on Adrian's face changed surprise, then frustration, then something almost like defeat. He stepped back into the kitchen, but kept the doorway in his view. Watching them, Ethan felt his pulse speed up as Lena led him toward the quieter part of the living room. She sat on the edge of the sofa and waited until he sat beside her. Her fingers were restless, twisting lightly around each other. Her eyes lifted to his, and he saw emotions swirling their fear. Hope, confusion, longing. Ethan, she whispered. What you said earlier. Did you mean it? Did you mean it? He swallowed. Every word. She let out a shaky breath. I didn't expect to hear something like that from you today. Not after everything you went through this morning. I felt it for a long time, he admitted. I just never knew if telling you would make things harder. It does make things harder, she said softly. But not in a bad way. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. I didn't know what to think when Adrian showed up. I didn't plan for him to be here. He's a good man, but he doesn't feel like someone who sees the parts of me that matter. You do, Ethan. You always have. Ethan's heart thudded harder. Lena, she leaned closer, her voice trembling. But I'm scared. I'm scared of risking what we already have. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to ruin anything. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers gently wrapped around hers. You won't lose me, he said firmly. You could push me away 100 times. I wouldn't leave your life unless you asked me to. Not after everything we've shared. Her eyes softened and he saw tears gathering there. Not sadness release. Relief. Emotion she had held back for too long. She leaned into his touch, squeezing his hand, grounding herself. Before she could respond, Adrian walked into the room. Lena, he said, voice tight. We need to finish the meal if your friend is staying. She turned her head slightly but didn't pull her hand away from Ethan. Adrian. Stop. The firmness in her voice made Adrian pause. I need to be honest, she said calmly. I don't want to pretend we're something we aren't. You're kind, but we don't have the connection you think we do. I don't want to lead you on. Adrian looked stunned for a moment. Then his gaze shifted to Ethan, irritation filling his eyes. So this is about him? Lena didn't flinch. It's about me. About how I feel. And how do you feel? Adrian challenged. She looked at Ethan again, longer this time, deeper. Her eyes full of unspoken truths. I care about him, she said quietly. More than I expected. More than I want to deny. Adrian let out a frustrated breath and backed away. I should go. Lena nodded gently. I think that's best. He grabbed his coat, his footsteps heavy, and left without another word. The door closed softly, but the silence afterward was loud. Too loud. Ethan felt the weight of the moment settle over them like a fragile thread that could snap at any second. Lena turned back to him, worry flickering across her face. I'm sorry you had to see that. You don't have to apologize, Ethan said softly. I'm glad you told him the truth. She took a breath, stepped closer, and rested her forehead lightly against his shoulder. I didn't choose you out of pressure, she whispered. I chose you because my heart did. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of her closeness, the softness of her voice, the trembling honesty in her words. He lifted his hand and gently brushed her hair back, letting his fingers linger. I never wanted to force you, he whispered. I just wanted you to know you weren't alone today, and that I wasn't alone either. Lena slowly pulled back, her eyes shining. You came to me because you needed comfort. I stayed with you because I needed you too. They stood in the quiet room, the glow from the candle flickering softly across their faces. Something changed in that moment, something tender and unspoken, something both of them had waited too long to acknowledge. Lena intertwined her fingers with his. Stay for the rest of the day, she said softly. Stay for dinner. Stay. Because I want you here. Ethan nodded, a slow smile forming, warm and relieved. I'm not going anywhere. And as they moved into the kitchen together side by side, shoulders brushing, the apartment no longer felt like the place where Ethan had escaped heartbreak. It felt like the place where something new, gentle and real had finally begun.